All right, welcome everybody to recent Grad Week Design. We have two fantastic alumni here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'll start with Yuri first.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yuri. I am currently working as a product designer at a clean tech in the States, and I am a grad student of I forgot my
Yes.
MDes. Yeah, MDes 2022 to 2023. So really excited to talk with you guys. Happy to get any questions, and I try to answer um, the best as much as possible as I can. So nice.
Awesome, thank you. And then I'll pass it over to Megan really quick.
Yep. Hi, I'm Megan. I'm currently a creative project manager for Estée Lauder, and I graduated in 2021 from CCA with an individualized bachelor's degree in graphic design and photography.
And Megan actually has a very all over the place kind of like trajectory of what she's done. So she has a fine arts background as well. Who did you work with before? It was
I
Annie.
work for Annie Leibovitz. Yep.
Yeah, so she definitely knows about networking, which is the scariest thing of a job hunt. But we will get started with a question that I'm sure recent grads probably are going to be wondering about. And there's no definitive timeline to it, of course. But we'll start with Megan since you kind of had like a very interesting route. And you actually, I will say, she was very gung ho about this too, because I remember when we first connected, she
Yep.
did a lot of mock interviews.
Yep.
But how
Too right.
long was your search before you landed your first role out of school?
Yeah, so my first role was actually at Wayfair in their 3D imagery department, and I got my official offer about 2 months after I graduated from CCA. So I started in July of 2021.
Cool. Yuri, how about you? Because I remember I met with you during, it was, I think, the fall career fair last year, and you were kind of talking about your process.
Right, yeah. So I started my job hunting around July, mid-July, which is like a month before I graduated, and then landed a job around October, mid-October. So I would say like 3 months average. But I think it really depends. Like some people were secured the job before they graduated, or like some people took like 6 months. So I would say it's like when you hear your friends started to get a job, then you kind of rush. But that's yeah, you don't have to do that. You always just focus on yourself and do not compare to others.
And then, so I know that there's international students around. Like, were you concerned about like for OPT or anything like that? Were you concerned about that clock ticking when you got done with school?
Um, yeah, I mean, consider about OPT.
Yeah, were you worried about that when you got done?
Well, I think most of the students, if they are in grad school, they have 3 years OPT. So that's kind of definitely a security for them. So I was kind of secure about that as well. But yeah, I think well, since we have 3 years OPT, the most important thing is just get whatever you got offered. I don't think the first job would much too much. So I would say, yeah, to me, that's like a bonus point for the grad students, and you can just get whatever you got at the
And
beginning.
I'm sure Yuri will testify to this, but definitely talk to Jessica and those folks in ISS if you have questions about those sort of things, because they are definitely experts on that. Okay, so our next question, and again, if you guys have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or to unmute yourself as well. So you guys went from being student designers. I don't know, Yuri, you came from like a previous experience and you were in the grad program, but how would you say that somebody could stand out going from student to an industry professional with limited experience? Because a lot of times you're going to be kind of going in there with student projects or maybe an internship or maybe a couple freelancing things. So what are some things that you think that somebody with limited experience could do to stand out? And we'll start with Yuri this time.
Yeah, it's actually a really good question because I'm definitely the one who didn't have too much experiences compared to other folks who have 4 to 5 years experience before going to school. But in my case, I've done like a couple of like pro bono internships during my college year and after graduated as well, and also like school project. And some of them were really short, like 2 weeks to 1.5 months. And you can even like privilege school projects as well if you don't have like internships coming up or don't have any experiences. So like if you look at your project, then start from like expanding researches, define your project, problem statements, and then work on the design and validate them. So, but even with that, you can further expand, like asking like, what if like you work with engineers? What would be the, struggles and what would be the approach? Or like what if like you don't have much time to work on the project or work on, implementing feature? What would be the, must-have feature and what would be the nice to have feature? Those kind of things like you can just ask yourself and then answer, or even like with mentors, you can kind of like, express your opinions and ask advice. And with that, you can kind of start to like see the real work, like perspectives that you can actually talk during the interview. So I would say you know, at the interview, you don't want to say like, oh, because I was a student, I don't have any experiences. But you want to say like, oh, to answer that question, my closest experience is this. And then I would think if this happens, and this is going to be definitely a selling point, even though you don't have experiences. So just, I would say like prepare as much as you can by, think about different situation that might face to you in the future. And then with that, like that's something that you can propose, and a lot of like, people wants to hear from you.
Great. Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, kind of going off of what Yuri was saying, I would say to really take any experience that you can get after graduation. So even when you're applying for jobs, if something seems like it only semi-relates to design, or just if it's an entry-level job that you think you could do and would be good at, I would say there are always opportunities, from my experience, to network within companies once you are starting out in a role. So just because it's not exactly what you're looking for, it doesn't mean that it's not really good experience. I would say once you have that first job, it helps your resume so much, just compared to even school jobs or internships that you may have had before. So really just that first job is so helpful no matter what it is, honestly. I didn't have the chance to have an internship when I was in school because of COVID. So it was really challenging to get remote internships, and they were just very limited at the time. So I think getting that first job really boosts your whole portfolio and your resume, and then you're no longer considering yourself a student who's applying, and you actually have industry experience.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point too, and this kind of goes to what Yuri said a few moments ago in regards to OPT, like, you get that first job, that's just your first job. That's not like
Yeah,
the end stop of your career. Like that
exactly.
eventually will just fall off your resume altogether, and you're going to have bigger and better things. But it's
Mhm.
just like you were saying, very important to get that first one going, so that way you can have that off point to like, I'm professional, not a student or a recent grad or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's also so different now than when from previous generations would spend 20 plus years at one job sometimes, and it's just really not like that anymore. So uh, it's really good to keep jobs for periods of time so that you show you're not job hopping too much. But I would also strongly encourage, just be on the lookout for other opportunities, and don't be afraid to take something if even if you've only been at your current job for a year or two.
Cool. Okay, so my next question, actually, so Megan and I worked on hers for quite a while, what advice do you have for recent grads who are building their portfolios for applications? Because I've noticed when I work with a lot of students is that there's the tendency to just dump everything in there. And then a lot of times the great stuff gets kind of like buried by the just okay stuff. So what kind of feedback would you have? Like Megan, what would you say off the bat?
Yeah, I would say less is more when it comes to what you're showcasing in your portfolio. Even if you have, for example, 30 really amazing design or photography pieces, I would say just keep it closer to 10 to 20 really strong pieces that you can focus on and that you can really speak to during interviews. So, for example, just speaking to how you might adapt that project to specific clients, or if you have an idea not in mind, but the client has a different idea in mind, you want to be able to speak to those strongly of how you might adapt it to those needs. So yeah, just focusing on really the best work. And that may mean taking out some of your other pieces that you are proud of, just to show the best.
What are your thoughts, Yuri?
Well, that I totally agree with Megan because, like most of the, recruiters just look at the, first piece of portfolio and then they don't look at anything else. So, literally like the best project should be the top, like most visible places that everyone can like easily find out. And then I would say another thing is usually like I spend so much time on like revising portfolio and then didn't have like so much time to like how to make it visible to others. And then that's something that is actually very important. So when you're actually working on it, like you can revise forever, but it never reach to that level of like perfection. Like portfolio gets never perfect. So at some point you kind of started to like, you know, look back and look for the opportunity, how you can like show and talk about your portfolio with everybody. And that's yeah, with some other like mentors or going to networking events, you can just like go to random events and talk about your project even. And that's gonna be a practice of your interview as well. So just think about like how to like show, even though it's not perfect, maybe like one or two revision would be good enough to start off with. So I would say, yeah, just try to like show that to as many people as possible. That's going to increase your opportunity to gain your job.
To Yuri's point as well, I would say you do show it to a lot of people, like us, teachers, friends, all that kind of stuff. You're going to get a lot of opinions and you will drive yourself crazy if you try to integrate them all together. So I would say if there's a lot of recurring themes, probably something to incorporate, but at the end of the day, it's your stuff. So figure out what works best for you. And I would also say first impressions 100% count. Like you're recent grad designer now. And so in class, you have all the syllabuses and stuff like that, but this is 100% your stuff. And so an employer is going to see, how your design aesthetic is for yourself. So putting a good foot forward with that is also very important. Were you gonna say something, Yuri?
Yeah, I completely agree with that because I would say like maybe like three to up to like five mentors that you're gonna like continuously work with and then stick with those people so that you don't get like swamped with so many opinions because otherwise you have no control like how your project is gonna be. So maybe like just consistently work with the fewer people that you really trust with and then like other than that, you can just listen, but gain his opinion, but don't necessarily have to like, incorporate that and revise your portfolio every time you ask opinions.
All right. Before my next question, again, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself. This is totally the time for that. But this is something that I worked with you on as well, Megan, when you were graduating, is interviewing. So, what advice, we'll start with you since we did quite a few mock interviews.
Yeah.
What advice would you have preparing students for interviews? Like if you took the knowledge that you had going into that and then applied it to now, what would you say?
Yeah, so I would say specifically if you are applying for a job and you know the company and the role and everything, I would say learn as much about the company as you can, not just what they do and what products they may or may not sell, but also culture, any recent news articles. Just try to get a broad sense of what the company is or who the client is that you're interviewing for. And as well, on top of that, I would just say get to know the hiring manager as much as you can and maybe know a bit about their experience from whether it be LinkedIn or another professional website like that. So, and then with that, you can start to tailor a few questions to that interview to have ready. So a question that would show the interview that you have done your research about the company and just that you are enthusiastic and also prepared for the specific interview. I would say also practice answering questions, practice out loud. That's very important, which I know we did a lot in our mock interviews. Just keep practicing those, especially the day of your interview, so you can just get your voice warmed up and just feel comfortable with talking and speaking to those questions that day.
What are your thoughts, Yuri?
Besides what Megan said, like you can also like do research by talking to like people like who are actually in the industry already. Like if you reach out to like LinkedIn, people like in LinkedIn or something, then sometimes people react and then just like have a quick discussion with you. And in that way you can like just casually asking about, the company in general and then learn about them. So that's one way. And another thing is I was actually struggling to, how to like, question stuff and something like that. So encounter with the book called A Designer's Guide to Interviewing. So that really helped me to like prepare for the whole interview. Like I remember like with the book it was saying that like ask some questions that a lot of designer wouldn't ask. So like think about like some unique questions that you can be memorable to the interviewee so that like you can kind of like show the difference between you and other like candidates. So just like something like but that is really hard to like come up with. So I think like that book really helped me to prepare for that.
A couple of things I don't know if you guys want to chime in after this too, but a couple of things I would say is when you prepare for these, you never know what kind of questions they're going to ask you. But the one that they always ask you is tell us about yourself one. And that is like definitely one you can prepare. And that's one where you like after you like nail that question, you have like some confidence going into it because you spoke very well on that one. But I think the second part that I would say, if you guys have feedback on this too, since you just went through a lot of these things, is most interviews, there's a lot of rounds and stages to these things. And first round, you're probably not speaking to like a design person. It's more like a recruiter who probably just going off of what the ATS stuff told them to do. And so, it's kind of like figuring out the questions that you should be asking that person so that way you're asking the right ones to get to the next level kind of thing.
Definitely. I would also say sometimes over preparing can hurt you. I've definitely done that before where you're over prepared and or you feel like you prepared the right answers to questions and then like you were mentioning, they may not even ask those questions. So I would say it's good to have general answers to a variety of questions, but don't focus so much on memorizing your answers and just have more of the bullet points in your head that you want to speak on.
All right. So next question for you guys. And again, if you have those in attendance have questions, feel free to ask them. This is a great opportunity for that. Okay, so what do you feel are some of the biggest like challenges you might be facing, in your fields or in the industries right now? And I feel like one of them might be two letters that are two vowels, the AI. So I don't know if things like that are impacting you guys, especially as designers, things, taking over some of that stuff from you all. But are there any challenges that you're feeling now that you maybe didn't anticipate like a year ago or anything?
I would say one of the biggest challenges right now is this was common when I graduated as well, is just it's very competitive right now and there are a lot of layoffs happening in a lot of different companies. I don't think that means that there are no jobs by any means. You can definitely get jobs at entry level, but just something to be aware of is that there are a lot of layoff cycles happening right now. So that's definitely been a challenge that I've seen. And as you were mentioning AI, I was actually thinking about that for an interesting trend in the creative industry right now is, I mean, it's definitely a challenge in some senses, but personally, I'm not too concerned about AI taking over creative roles specifically. And I've personally been trying to use it as a tool that I can work with. So for example, in Photoshop or other software like that, kind of using it as a tool and learning how it works. Because within the next 5 years, it's really going to be a lot more prevalent than it even is now. So I would recommend treating AI as you would any of the Adobe apps and just learn as much as you can and hope that it doesn't take over the world.
Yeah, so like well, definitely, budget cut and laid off is happening in a lot of industries. But when you wanna think about that around that phase is probably like with the minimum cost, like what maximum like outcome you can make out of the company. Like you have like several work, and then you probably like, gotta be assigned like several projects as well. But when you focus on like each project, what would be the best outcome with the minimum effort or minimum time with minimum budget. Like that's something like you kind of like started to shift as your mindset to just really like, align with the company's directions like at this moment. So if you can really like show that to your company, then you can also like, value it as an important person in the company. But I it's really tough, like especially like last couple years. But there's a chances. I see like people still getting jobs, so it's light, but definitely like there are chances, especially like small startup companies and stuff like that is looking for people. So um yeah, just focus on like your actions and then don't try not to like think about too much like market because that's something that you cannot control. Um, yeah.
I would say it's a challenge, obviously, like you guys mentioned, with like layoffs and things like that. But what's really great about you all as designers from whatever discipline, from interaction to graphic design and stuff like that, is that there's so many industries that need you guys to do what you do. I mean, optically, you might be like, that's an architecture company. I don't want to work there. But it's like they need all the same stuff that like a design firm would need too, you know? So I think that that's definitely like opens the window and the scope for what folks could do. It might not be like the dream job, but as we said, it's like maybe it's just the first job, you know, and it opens up a lot of other kind of things along the route.
Yeah. And to that, I would say I would also embrace contract roles and any kind of temporary contract roles. I have done a mix of full-time and contract, and they both have their benefits, they both have their drawbacks, but just don't discount the type of job, especially when you're initially looking, because contract can always lead to either full-time or just really helpful experience.
Yeah, and it's a quick way to scuttle off a lot of the student work too,
Yes.
because you're getting more professional things, builds out your resume, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which goes back to what we were saying. If you have limited experience, that's a quick way to help get some of that on there.
Yep.
All right. So during your times here at CCA, and Megan also has some experience from SFAI, so there's more skills that she has, but what skills, CCA prepared you guys for a lot of things, but what are some of the skills, maybe software, things that, maybe you didn't learn in school that you wish you would have known going into working professionally? And we'll start with Yuri on this one.
Not much. Like most of stuff like I learned from CCA was good enough to, work with the industry, especially like Adobe and Figma. If you are like skillful enough about these software, then I would say that's good enough. Like there's some like other softwares, but I recommend like instead of like learning everything in general, just be really professional about well, Figma and Adobe, like really deep. And that's gonna like help you. Unfortunately, like some people in industry are not too professional Figma, and like they have like history of like learning sketches instead and stuff, and actually looking for like people who are alt level of Adobe or Figma. And that skills, if you can show that, then that's really a bonus point. And if you're confident about like showing off your Figma file, for example, then you can even attach to your portfolio link, and people look at it and they can tell like how skillful you are. So I think like just I would say like in my case, two software was good enough for me to go with the professional.
What would you say, Megan?
I would say one of the skills that I kind of learned more when I started jobs and didn't learn as much in college was more about business strategy and budgeting, like Yuri was mentioning earlier, budgeting, forecasting, resource planning as far as people and budgetary resources go. So when I worked for Annie Leibovitz and now when I work for Estée Lauder, that's definitely been a very prevalent skill that I've learned just from experience and from watching mentors at different jobs. So that's definitely a skill that's really helpful, especially in project management. And it definitely relates to the creative field a lot, whether you want it to or not. So that's been a skill that I have really tried to lean into over the past few years. And then just some practical skills like in New York. With production, there are just things that you learn as you go. So, for example, like certain pickup locations in the city or just logistics that are different in each location that you're living. So, yeah, just continuing to learn and remain open to learning all of these new skills. They will always be helpful in the future.
Yeah, those more super grown up ones that you learn. Those are the ones that take you from like junior, mid-level, like to really push you up the ladder, because those are like the really, really hard ones that are like very acquired skills.
Definitely. Yeah, and really just actual industry experience is the best way to learn those. So I know that there are some business related classes at CCA and at SFAI, and those will definitely help a lot, but they can only get you so far until you're actually doing the job.
And I will say, you guys can probably attest to this. You can always ask people that you work with about these things because they've been in the industry for a long time and they want to help you guys get good at it so that way the business can thrive.
Yeah, a lot of people are very open to answering questions and giving advice no matter what stage you're at.
All right. So, my next question for you all is, are you currently where you thought you would be professionally from when you graduated from CCA? And we'll start with Megan.
Yeah, I would say I'm further along than I expected that I would be. Like you were mentioning before, the first job is not your only job, and going into my first job, I expected to be there for at least 5 to 10 years. Just that's my mindset going into it. So having a breadth of experience, including working for Annie, was something that I had always wanted to do. So I would say go for those bigger goals that seem unattainable and just keep pushing for them, and eventually it will probably happen if you have enough dedication for it. So yeah, I'm definitely further along than I expected to be at 3 years out of college.
Cool. Yuri, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't really expected to be like in the clean tech field at first, but it's funny because like in retrospect, I did a lot of like environmental related project at school, and then it kind of like led me to like in that path of like going further forward. So like maybe like some folks don't really know like which field they should go in, but then sometimes like your past experiences or project will tell you like which field that you're really good at or you're interested in. And then like probably like my next step would be the same. Like looking back, then I don't know yet, but I'll probably figure out like what field I'm interested in future. So like just yeah. I didn't think about it too much when I was doing job hunting, so that was kind of interesting findings.
Cool. All right. The ice has officially been broken, and we have our first student question in the chat. Feel free to add more if you guys have them. If you only have student projects or intern experience without measurable impact, how can you make it sound impressive enough on your resume to get an interview?
Good question. Just off the top of my head, I would say any of those small tasks that you do at a job, I think they can always be expanded to sound like they're either a bit more impressive or like they're actually relating to the specific job that you're applying for. So I'll try to give an example. Like if you had a design internship and you're applying for a graphic designer job, even if you only shadowed somebody doing graphic design or you only helped with parts of it, I would just relate it back to you shadowed a senior graphic designer, or relate it back to the person that you were actually working with, so that it makes your impact on the broader team seem more measurable. So I think there are always ways to make your impact actually measurable to relate to whatever job you're applying for.
Really quick before you jump in, Yuri, Megan, that's actually a really good point too, because like you said, even if it's like shadowing or maybe doing a little bit, that's like a collaborative nature that design people and hiring people just love, is that
Yes.
you don't come across as we, I, me kind of stuff. It's super collaborative what they wanted, because it's a team doing it. And
Yeah.
that might be like a difficult thing students have to adjust from school, is in school you do all of it pretty much.
Mhm. Yeah, and then even relating back to wherever if you're designing a graphic, wherever that ends up, you can also mention that and say that your impact directly contributed to the end goal of wherever that's ending up.
Cool. Yuri, did you have any input?
Yeah, it's really good question. I put a lot of thoughts on it. But so like measurable impact, two ways, like qualitative and quantitative. Sometimes like you can just get like qualitative like outcomes like out of, you know, some like conducting like further interviews or surveys with minimum people if you cannot get like qualitative data. So with that project, you can maybe like introduce that and then ask people what they would think. And that could be like some of the like feedback and it could be like the measurement as well. Like it's not the actual one, but you can like put their insights in it as a qualitative data. So in that way, you can kind of like prove that I got this feedback and this feedback, and that's not qualitative, but that's good enough to show during the interview, I would say.
Great. All right, that was an excellent question. If anyone has more, feel free to throw them in there. Okay, my next question for you is, and we'll start with you, Yuri. What would you feel is the most interesting trend that you're noticing in 2024? That's maybe not on the doom and gloom side of like layoffs and things like that.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't like dig in too much about like industry trend except like um clean tech. So I'll talk about like clean tech, but I think like right now it's happening is, well, environmental sustainability is the very interesting like stuff, I would say, because well, there's like also like what I'm working at is like solar and in battery industry. So there's always, you know, mass production, some competitions of hardware and stuff, but also at the same time, like regulations always changes, and then even like presidential election could contribute to that as well. So it's like kind of like ambiguity, but definitely the society is leaning towards to more sustainable society. So there's a hope. And then I got like, yeah, great people in the company, to be honest. So it's if you can like really enjoy that ambiguous situation of what's gonna happen in the future, then that's the good field that you can kind of look for as well. But yeah, I'll stop here.
All right. Megan, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say I've noticed a lot of interactive design work and artwork. So whether that be, for example, one of Estee Lauder's brands has this new try-on feature where If you are seeing impaired, then you can actually have the camera recognize your face and tell you if you're putting your lipstick on correctly and if it looks good. So using a mix of AI and just interactive arts to actually create this type of software is really new and impressive that I've noticed. So even interactive billboards or interactive magazine covers, just that whole AR relationship is becoming a lot more prevalent.
Cool. All right. Well, since you all in the audience have been very quiet, I have one question left. So if you would like to ask anything, now is the time. But my question for you guys is, what is one piece of practical advice that you would give to the folks here who have graduated that are going to be starting out? And that might be kind of a very big kind of question, but it could also be a very small answer. We'll start with you, Megan.
Yeah, I would say staying resilient and adaptable is very important, especially as you're applying for jobs. I have truly found that everything does work out, even when it doesn't feel like it's going to. And just really putting your best foot forward and continuing to apply or continuing to work on personal projects really keeps spirits and creativity up for me. So I would say just do that and set your own goals that are not related to whatever job you're currently in or applying for.
Cool. Yuri, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like as an international student, I realized like unfortunately like in the States, networking is the crucial part of job hunting. So even though like you have a great skill and you are very capable of doing everything, but if you don't know anything, then the chance is less. So if you're just applying for the cold call, that's important as well. But like look for some of the events, in San Francisco Bay Area, events are happening every week, every weekend. So just attend whatever you find and talk to people, you know, talk to them like and then tell them what you can do. And that's like gonna help you definitely in the future. You can reach out to them whatever the way that you feel comfortable. If you're not comfortable talking to them in person, then you can reach out online, or you can just book some session with mentors, like ADP list is one of the good examples. So just besides applying job, like secure the time to actually reach out to people and let them know about you. That's gonna like take a long time, but it'll connect. And then some people might reach out to you, hey, I have some openings that you'd be interested in. So I highly encourage all of you to do that.
My piece of feedback I would give to you or advice is, one, you guys are graduating at a very perfect time, despite all the wackiness that's happening in the world and the country, with jobs and whatever. Like this is like the perfect time to be applying for stuff because it's not the holidays, it's not the end of people's fiscal years. A lot of times the beginning of them where budgets are being reloaded. So you guys are graduating at the perfect time. The second thing that I would say is, even if it's just like one job you apply to today, every day, like that's still small forward progress that will get you going, and that's better than just staying stagnant and getting in your head and not applying to stuff. So those are things that I would say to you all. And oh, we have our second question. All right, perfect. Okay, what application strategies yielded the most success for you? Was it mass cold applying, certain job boards, referrals, networking, etc.? Does any one of you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I would say I had kind of a unique situation where 3 out of 4 of the jobs or internships that I've had are from LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn Easy Apply, which is very rare to get actual jobs from there. So I would recommend using Easy Apply, using Indeed. Cold calling, I haven't done exactly, but reaching out to different connections continuously is really important. And that's how I got my job with Annie. So just don't be afraid to bug people sometimes and reach out after a few months and say, oh, do you have anything, any job openings, or do you have anything in mind right now? So yeah, like I said earlier, cast a wide net for jobs that you're applying for, and I've found that yields the best results.
Yuri, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say I've done pretty much everything. Like, so code applying, certain job boards, referral networking. So like try everything like you can would be the good tactics, I'd say. Well, there's differences, code applying, like you can just like make some goals every day and do that every day. Networking, it might take time. Referral may take more, even more. But like doing everything at the same time, you don't know like which one is going to work for you the best. So just not like to think too much, but just like do actions. Like maybe you can like set a goal, like reach out to like people, like 1 to 3 people a day, then that's good enough. And you can just use like any of the resource that you have. So that's gonna increase your chances. And in terms of like cold apply, I remember that I started to apply some of the job that is least appealing to me. So because I was not really confident about showing my portfolio earlier. So save some jobs that you are really wanting later on when the time that you can get more confident so that you can apply. So but yeah, it's doing everything is good.
Awesome. Does anybody have any last questions as we wrap up a little bit early since you've all been kind of quiet today? I will take that deafening silence as your minds are blown by all the information that Yuri and Megan had for you. With that in mind, thank you very much to Yuri and Megan for taking time out of their days. Megan is on the East Coast, and I'm not sure if you sacrificed lunch for this or not. If you did, I apologize. And then Yuri's about ready to go on lunch. So thank you very much to you guys. And remember, they were exactly where you all were at one point. So everything is possible. And, definitely follow them on LinkedIn, reach out to them if you have questions or anything like that. I hope that's all right for me to volunteer that to you guys. But you guys are free to go back to your summer vacation. And if you have questions about career stuff, reach out to us. As recent grads, you have 5 years of access to us for as much or as little help as you would like. And we can help you with anything you have questions on. So
Use it.
yeah. If you still need some, Megan, you're more than welcome. You too, Yuri.
Thank you. Yes, it's very helpful.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And I will let you all go.
Best of luck. Thank you.